Welcome to Reading Between the Reels, the podcast that takes a closer look at the movies you love to see what's always been there. I'm Craig Dickinson.
And I'm Matt Leader. Today on the show, we're talking about a couple changes that we're going through. And to kind of start us off, Craig, why are we changing the name and the show art and pretty much everything?
Well, Matt, I would have to say that it's really a natural progression of what we've been doing. You know, the first season of Coruscant Community College was spent on really introducing the film aspects that we focus on in our classrooms, be that cinematography, sound, performance, and set design. And then the natural progression from there was to do analysis using those tools in the Star Wars films, which we did for season 2. And then from there, it just made a lot of sense to kind of expand our horizons. We've talked a lot off air about DC and Marvel films and using those same strategies. We've even talked about doing a spin-off podcast. And so it really seemed like we were kind of limiting ourselves to do simply Star Wars and not really look at what else is going on when we have passion for those things. And so I really think that what we're looking at is we're kind of in a place where Star Wars is in a little bit of a lull between projects. But movies they're coming out continually. We had things like the Snyder Cut was released recently, and we're getting new trailers and new announcements for film all the time. And so, it's a thing that we're passionate about. And I think that, we've also really enjoyed the conversations that we've had breaking down the films. And really that's just become a thing that we found that we really enjoy that aspect of it. And so we're going to run out of Star Wars films pretty quick. And so it seems just like the natural thing to do to move on to the greater film library that's out there right now, and what's come out and what's to come.
Yeah, and I feel like I kind of felt the same thing where, in our off podcast discussions, we'd be talking about Star Wars, yeah, but also any other random movie that we happen to see. And for me, it was kind of like, why are we limiting ourselves to just Star Wars when really we enjoy talking about all movies in general?
So, Matt, moving forward, what are your expectations for what we'll be doing? What are you looking forward to? And what can our audience expect from us moving forward?
So, moving forward, the audience can expect episodes every other week on a bi-weekly basis. We decided to do away with seasons and just go ahead and go forward with an every other week schedule, partially because we're now open to any movie and we don't feel like we have to kind of pause and wait for more Star Wars content to come out. So the other thing is that we have talked about picking themes to do overall. As an example, it's not something we've decided, but doing all the Spider-Man movies and kind of comparing them and looking at them. It's not necessarily what we're going to do every other week. Every new episode will be a different film, and it can be anything. It could be a new film that came out. It could be an old film. You could do a retrospective. I know we're going to finish up talking about the Star Wars films, and then after that, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that because I did want to reinforce the fact that we are going to finish the Star Wars films. We started a series going through the prequels and then Solo and Rogue One, doing the movies in chronological order. So our next full episode will be on A New Hope. We'll finish off the original trilogy and then do episodes 7, 8, and 9. And then we'll kind of see what happens from there. Some things that come to mind immediately. And again, we haven't committed to any of these, but they're on the list of possibles are things like Indiana Jones. And then definitely, comic book movies, I think, are probably at the forefront of what we're thinking about and what we'll be doing. And, something I'm really excited about is, talking about going back and looking at classic movies because, I'm a child of the 80s and Superman the movie was a big movie for me, a big influence. And it's still one of the movies that I love and you've never seen it.
Nope.
So it'd be fascinating to be able to break that movie down and talk about the differences between what an experienced viewer who's kind of looking through the nostalgia glasses looks at versus a novice viewer. And I know there's films that you've seen that I have not. And so you'll still get that same dynamic, and I'm really looking forward to that.
And I also think that there's really interesting things that we can do comparing the 80s Superman movies to Snyder and his interpretation of Superman. And there's opportunities like that where they sound really fun to talk about. And in our old format of Coruscant Community College, we felt kind of limited because we were selling the show as Star Wars and exclusively Star Wars. And we wanted to expand our horizons.
Yeah, there's a huge audience for movies out there, and just from the limited time that we've been involved in the early stages of rebranding and starting to interact with people online on Twitter and our Facebook group about some of the new movies that are coming out, like for instance with Black Widow being announced as coming on Disney Plus and in theaters the same day, and we can talk about like, well, what are you interested in? What would you go see it in a theater? What are your choices for that? What are you thinking about the studio's choices on that? And then things like the Suicide Squad trailer just dropped recently, and there's clearly a lot to talk about that. We mentioned Snyder Cut. We have the things like Black Adam. So there's continually movies coming out. Star Wars, as we said, is in a little bit of a lull, but there's just continually interesting movie choices coming out. We saw something about the Kenobi series recently that's also coming out. So, we're not going to just limit ourselves to feature films. We'd also like to talk occasionally about TV shows. I'm a huge fan of J.J. Abrams' Alias, and so I'd like to look at that, especially the first episode, because it's very cinematic. And so if we want to look at that or some things that are on Netflix or other streaming series, we're open to doing those as well. We just wanted to open up to anything that we're passionate about or that our listeners might be passionate about, anything just to kind of stir up that conversation and keep the conversation going.
I think that's great. So did you want to talk a little bit about how people could get involved?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of interesting that on the one hand, we're expanding our focus on what we'll be talking about on the show, but we're also narrowing our focus on the ways that we're going to be interacting online. We've had Instagram, which we've used occasionally, Tumblr, LinkedIn, Pinterest, all these things. But really what we're going to do is we're going to stay focused on Twitter and Facebook. Twitter a lot. It's very easy to interact. We've already been very active on that. And then our Facebook group, the Reading Between the Reels Facebook group, is something that we've had a lot of conversation on. And what's great about both those things is that if you're already part of those groups or already interacting with us in those ways, the links have not changed. The names have changed, but we remain the same. So you can find us in all those same places. And ultimately, the idea is that by limiting our focus this way, we can actually go deeper in the conversations that we do have, and also get to interact with listeners regarding content, upcoming content, and perhaps having things suggested to us, movies that they like to see us unpack a little bit more, or just receiving feedback, giving feedback that much quicker is something that we've seen a little bit of, and just want to continue to enjoy that.
So as we close, we just want to say thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook, or you can email us at readingbetweenreels@gmail.com.
And if you haven't yet, please join our Facebook group. It's a safe place to share your thoughts and discuss all things related to movies.